The Kentucky sun beat down on Mark's back, sweat plastering his t-shirt to his skin. It had been 3 weeks since the Knox event began. 3 weeks since the world went to hell. But Mark wasn't just dealing with shambling hordes of Zed. Thanks to some twisted quirk of fate, or maybe just a bad mod installation, his apocalypse had gone greener. He wiped his brow with the back of his hand and surveyed his handiwork. The 2-story house in Muldrow, previously abandoned and looted, was now a fortress, albeit a slightly eccentric one. Cardboard boxes lined the windows, reinforced with wooden planks. Outside, a meticulously planned grid of plants stood guard. "All right, sunshine producers, keep pumping that juice," Mark muttered, watering a row of sunflowers. These golden orbs were his lifeline, their radiant energy fueling his leafy defenders. Next to them, a line of pea shooters spat pea after pea, a constant thwack 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 filling the air. He'd learned quickly that the standard Zed weren't the only threat. Conehead zombies, their protective traffic cones barely slowing the peas, shambled relentlessly. Buckethead zombies, even more resilient, required concentrated fire. And then there were the specialized units. Mark shuddered, remembering his first encounter with a pole-vaulting zombie. The undead athlete had cleared his hastily constructed fence with ease, landing in the middle of his sunflowers. Thankfully, a strategically placed chomper had snapped him up before he could do too much damage. Chompers were his heavy hitters, giant Venus flytrap-like plants that could swallow a zombie whole. Alongside them, snapdragons breathed fire in short bursts, roasting groups of weaker Zeds. He'd even managed to find a cactus, its prickly exterior surprisingly effective against the hordes. His ultimate weapon, however, was the cattail. Perched atop the roof, this amphibious feline unleashed a barrage of homing thistles, taking down zombies that strayed too far from the main horde. It was slow to fire, but its accuracy was unmatched. Mark's garden was his pride and joy. Tomatoes, carrots, and potatoes grew in neat rows, supplementing his scavenged canned goods. He needed the food. Maintaining the plants, fortifying the base, and fighting off the relentless undead was exhausting. Today's threat assessment indicated a high likelihood of a football zombie attack. These brutes were heavily armored and moved surprisingly fast. Mark needed to reinforce his defenses. "All right, time to do some foraging," he said, grabbing his crowbar and backpack. He'd need scrap metal for more fencing and maybe, just maybe, he'd find some more seeds. A walnut or a potato mine would be a game changer. As he ventured out, he couldn't help but feel a sense of surreal absurdity. He was fighting zombies with plants. He had crafted a little slice of bizarre normalcy in the middle of the apocalypse. He navigated the deserted streets, his eyes constantly scanning for threats. A newspaper zombie, enraged by the destruction of its prized paper, charged towards him. A quick swing of the crowbar, and the Zed went down. Suddenly, a high-pitched booing echoed through the air. Mark whirled around, his heart pounding. A pogo zombie, bouncing erratically, was heading straight for his garden. Not today, you overgrown trampoline accident. Mark yelled, sprinting back towards his base. He reached the garden just as the pogo zombie landed. It bounced once, twice, then crashed into a row of sunflowers, scattering leaves and petals. No! Mark screamed in anger. He grabbed a nearby baseball bat and charged. He swung with all his might, connecting with the zombie's helmet with a sickening crack. The pogo zombie collapsed, its pogo stick clattering to the ground. But the damage was done. The sunflowers were destroyed, crippling his energy production. He needed a new strategy, and fast. Then, he spotted it. Through a gap in the trees, he saw a small pond. An idea sparked in his mind. He could divert the zombies, guiding them towards the water. Then, he could use his cat tail to pick them off, as they struggled in the water. He spent the next hour, carefully dismantling his fence, creating a narrow path leading towards the pond. It was a risky move, leaving his base exposed, but it was his only hope. As the next wave of zombies approached, led by a menacing football zombie, Mark opened the path. The horde, drawn by the scent of brains, followed the narrow trail towards the pond. The football zombie, surprisingly agile for its size, plowed through the other Zeds, eager to reach Mark's base. But as it stepped onto the muddy bank of the pond, its heavy cleats sunk into the muck. It struggled, its momentum lost. From his rooftop perch, the cat-tail unleashed a volley of homing thistles. Thwipey! 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 The thistles pierced the football zombie's helmet, finally bringing it down. The remaining zombies, bogged down in the mud, were easy pickings. The cat-tail made short work of them, one by one. Mark watched as the last zombie sank below the surface of the pond. Exhaustion washed over him. He had survived, but at a cost. His garden was damaged, his energy production crippled. But he would rebuild. He would replant. He would adapt. He was the gardener of the apocalypse, and he wasn't going down without a fight. He would continue to cultivate his bizarre oasis, one pea, one thistle, one sunflower at a time. Because in a world gone mad, sometimes, the only thing you could do was plant a garden.